Welcome to the Mindful Mama Movement podcast. I'm Shannon Kinney-Dew, creator of afreespiritlife.com.
And I'm Ashley Walburn, owner of Home Holistic. And together, we are bringing you the Mindful Mama Movement.
Mindful mothering is about nurturing your heart and soul while you nurture your children. It's about consciously awakening to your inner wisdom and being peacefully present as a mama, no matter where you are on your journey. From discovering your newborn to loving and accepting the wonderful people who've left your nest. Our movement is empowering mamas to be authentic and to live inspired lives. We are so happy you're here.
Be free to feel free to be
Hey everyone, it's Shannon. Ashley and I are really excited to share this interview with you today. And we wanted to just let you know that towards the end of the interview, we do talk a little bit about the political climate going on right now in the U.S. and how it's affecting us all over the world. And also, in honor of all the love and peace that we need in the world, we are bringing our t-shirts back for sale for a couple of weeks. We have a beautiful tank and long sleeve shirt called I Choose Peace and Love. You can check it out on our website, mindfulmamamovement.com, and these will be for sale for a limited time only. They are awesome. They are soft and great quality, and they share the message of peace and love that we all know we need so much right now. And so if you're feeling that too, if you can help us spread the Mindful Mama movement, spread the message of peace and love, we would just feel so grateful for you to support us and our shirt sales. All of the sales will help to support our show. This is a labor of love that we are putting together for you, and it would just help us out tremendously. So go to www.mindfulmamamovement.com and buy your shirt. They will be available for a limited time, and you can also join us on our Facebook group, Mindful Mama Movement Groups, and we are sharing in the discussion about all the stuff going on. We'll share more about this topic in our group, and you can also see the link to buy our shirts there. So happy day and enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, it's Ashley. Welcome to episode 17. In today's show, you'll meet Hala Khouri. And she is my friend of about 8 years. She's a yoga teacher. She lives in Los Angeles, California, where she practices and teaches yoga. She's also a somatic psychologist, and she is one of the creators of Off the Mat Into the World with Seane and Suzanne Sterling. It's a not-for-profit organization that's dedicated to utilizing the tools of yoga and somatic practices within a justice framework. And they travel all over doing training. So check out Off the Mat Into the World. And you can also find more about Hala at halakhouri.com. So we are here with my dear friend, Hala Khouri, and we would like to welcome you to the show.
Hi, Hala.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. We're so happy to have you. And why don't you get started and just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what stage of motherhood you're in?
Sure. So, who I am. Let's see. I'll start with what I do. I teach yoga. I am a somatic counselor. I'm also one of the founders of a nonprofit called Off the Mat Into the World that bridges yoga, activism, and social justice. So I spend a lot of my time talking to people about trauma and self-regulation. And I also work with direct service providers, training them to be trauma informed. So my specialty in my somatic work is trauma work, working with people who have survived trauma and helping them recalibrate their bodies and their minds and their hearts. My children, I have 2 boys, ages 6 and 9, with very different personalities. So I'm in I feel like constant stage of motherhood of humiliation and inspiration.
That's a good way to put it.
Humiliation. And but knowing in my heart that I love them, and that should buffer them against all the mistakes that I'm making with them.
Hala, I have 3 boys, and my 2 oldest are 6 and 9 also.
I
My
love
God.
it.
Yeah, it's a fun age.
I feel like my babies are 6 and 9, but they're not. They're old babies.
They're taller than you.
Everybody but Owen, and he was sick last week, and I carried him to bed like all the way up the stairs.
Oh my
And
God.
I was so determined to do it. I was like, this is probably the last time I'm ever going to do this. But it was tricky. I know.
Were you sore
Yeah,
afterwards?
that's probably. I told Shannon that I have a sore knee. Now I'm realizing that's probably why I was carrying a 12-year-old up the stairs. Can you share with us just a little bit about your family of origin and their migration to the United States and how that's impacted your work, and also how you parent?
Sure. So I'm originally from Beirut, Lebanon, and I was born there. And when I was 3 years old, we left because of the war. So in 1976, we came to the United States. Um, and, we got to escape a lot of violence and a lot of chaos by coming here. So I think that, being from a country that is, struggling with war and all of the discord and chaos going around in that region definitely has impacted me and has influenced my work in the world and my parenting. And so those are two very broad questions, but I guess I'll go into how I parent.
Yeah.
um, I think that, prior to having kids, I had this like amazing fantasy about what it was going to be like. And I was going to be this like really mellow mother, and we would do a lot of art, and they'd play with wood toys and, you know, make art together. Um, and I think for me, I'm doing my best to think that my job is to raise adults, right? I'm not raising children. I'm raising adults. I'm
Yeah.
raising them to be adults. And coming from a family history with trauma like that, I have a mom who's really overprotective, and I understand that. I mean, I can't even imagine being in a country where there's war and we have to go down into the basement because there's bombs going off. So my mom has always been a very protective parent. And so I noticed that I have that tendency in my parenting, and especially raising boys. I think that that's not going to be a healthy thing for them, especially very, very strong-willed boys, particularly my older one. Um, so, I mean, I've read all the books. I have stacks of them on my table and on my shelves. And when they were younger, I definitely would have identified as attachment parenting. I mean, they were both breastfed till they were about 2.5. Um, I was able to have them both at home, which was great to have, to be able to do natural childbirth and push them out in the living room. Um, and they slept in our beds. My younger one still comes to our bed at night. Um, and so when they were younger, the attachment parenting was what felt really right for us. And for me, it's harder as they've gotten older, where I need to actually let them be more independent, not meet all their needs. I heard this interesting metaphor, so we've got the helicopter parent metaphor. And then I just heard one called the snowplow parent, like the parent that even gets ahead of what their kids need to make sure they like never have to feel uncomfortable.
Wow, yeah.
I think
Interesting. I wonder who came up with that
I
metaphor.
know,
It's a good
I
one.
know. And and it's interesting because like as when they're babies, it was like they were always having their needs met before they even knew that they had needs. And now I need to stop doing that, because otherwise they're going to be total jerks. It's like I need them to feel hungry and ask me for food, rather than me like always have food in front of their faces, and have them avoid discomfort. So that's been my challenge, is I feel like my kids have everything they need, and they're going to be total, can I say bad words on this?
Yes.
A-holes. They're going to be assholes. If they don't, if they like they expect their needs are going to be met,
Yes.
and they don't realize how much privilege they have. And I don't want to be one of those like there's children starving in Africa parents, right? But how do I have them how do I inspire gratitude in them without like ramming it down their throats? So it's been an interesting journey to step back a little and try to do more under parenting. That's a phrase I'm really liking, under parenting, so that they can experience their own resilience and not lean on me all the time.
I love that. And I'm in that same stage too. I definitely did the attachment parenting thing. I didn't really label it that, but we are in that same place where, and my husband's been extremely helpful when I feel overwhelmed about even the tasks at home, whether it's getting snacks or whatever. He really helps me remember that they can do this. Like they can help with their dishes and they can help, prepare some of the meal. So we've been really, really encouraging that. And I totally see what you mean. Like we were getting, we could definitely go down that a-hole path if we weren't careful. And now what I'm finding, and this is my question to you, is because sometimes we think if I just do it myself, it's like, you're keeping the plates up in the air and keeping things balanced. But really, what I'm learning right now is that, if I take that extra time to teach them that independence and let them just, figure some of the stuff on their own, that the balance for me is slowly returning. I don't feel like it's all on me. How do you kind of
Yeah.
maintain balance? And have you noticed that too? Is that helping you in the way you're choosing to mother in this stage?
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm always weighing out like if I just did it now, it'll be done perfectly and swiftly. And if I have them do it, it's so much harder now, but I'm investing in it being easier in the future. So for sure, I'm trying to increase their chores and their responsibilities. And, now my older son can go like toast a bagel for himself and put butter on it. And like, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to even actually make a full breakfast.
Right.
So for sure, I think I still go back and forth because I tend to be a control freak. I will admit that, and it gets in my way. And I'm really working hard on having them be more self-reliant and more helpful, and see that we're here as a family and everybody has to contribute, and try to help them see this relationship between their responsibilities and their privileges. Um, and not even having that always be the motivation, and just kind of saying, look, we've got to all help each other because that's what families do. So I'm still, I'm working on that. I'm not really getting the return I would like. um, I started having them fold their laundry, quote unquote fold their laundry, which they started to get really good at. And then my older son, who's really practical, said, hey, I don't want to fold my laundry. I don't care if it's folded or not. So I'm just going to put it away. And it was like a 20-minute debate where I tried to convince him he should fold his laundry. And if I get into a debate with my 9-year-old, he always wins. Where he could not find any reasonable reason to fold the laundry because it gets messy anyways. So he just started putting his laundry away. And I just decided that would be fine. Like, I don't care.
Yeah,
As
why
long as,
do we care? I wonder
yeah,
that sometimes.
yeah,
Like, why
Well,
am
because
I like,
even
yeah,
if
just because
it's
it's the way I do it. Yeah.
right, but if it's folded, they go in there for one thing and then everything's disaster anyway.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's
So I'd
pointless.
rather that if they do get to the point where they're like, oh, I can't find anything, it's easier if it's folded. I'd rather they experience that and then get motivated to fold it. So yeah, there's a lot of me asking myself, why do I want that? And about half of what I want them to do, I just want them to do it because I want it that way.
Right.
And there isn't really a reason for it. And I do have an older son that will challenge everything, and it's so hard. I tell him he's going to be such an incredible adult, but it's really hard as a kid. But he has said to me flat out, like, unless I understand why you need me to do something, I'm not going to do it.
Mhm.
And it's really forced me to be really clear about like what's important, like what do I need him to do, and what can, like if he doesn't want to take a sweater out, let him get cold, let him get sick even,
Yeah.
then next time he'll decide to take the sweater. So how do I let them, how do I take these risks and let them get hurt or feel disappointed, because then they're going to remember.
Yeah.
And I need to stop being that snowplow parent trying to have them avoid discomfort, because that does not serve them at all.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's so good. You had said that there's like you have a lot of books that you've read through. Is there any book that stands out to you that's been particularly useful?
Um, which book? God, they're all like a blur. I really like The Whole Brain Child,
Oh yeah.
because I feel like it's a really, it's sort of grounded and in the science. Because I think that a lot of parenting books, all they do is make me feel like a really crappy parent, because they like paint these scenarios of like how it should be, and then I feel so inadequate. I also really like Parenting Without Power Struggles. And I'm forgetting the author's name. And what I love about that book is she's not trying to sell you on some specific technique you're supposed to do in the moment. She's reminding us that what matters most is maintaining connection with our kids. So that, like, maybe I screamed at him because he wouldn't get off the video games, and then I like didn't mirror him properly when he was upset. But if before we go to bed, we sit and we have a great conversation and he feels really connected and I feel really connected, then I did it quote unquote right. Like, can we maintain connection even if we're messing up and we're not doing specific techniques, even if in the moment they're disappointed with us and we're not having this like beautiful made for TV movement moment where it all gets resolved. The next day is their connection, and that book helped me pull out of the moment by moment interactions and trying to get it all exactly right, and had me rather look at overall, do I feel connected to my kids and do they feel connected to me? And that was really helpful.
I think it's really helpful for me, for
Yeah.
sure, because I think there's a lot of expectations on me, for sure, just in the mothering community here,
Yeah.
and a lot of eyes on me. But
Yeah.
like a lot of people say, like, "Oh my God, I wish I was such a like peaceful mom like you." And I'm like,
Yeah.
Talk to
spend
my
enough
boys.
at my
Yeah.
house that, just because I'm teaching you how to breathe doesn't mean that I'm breathing myself when I'm at
Right.
home.
Right.
We did an interview with a Buddhist priest, Karen Mason Miller, and she said something that like really stuck out to me about her daughter that, just she said, one thing I know about parenting is nothing goes the way I thought it would. Nothing,
Yeah.
not one thing.
Yeah.
And that she just says, I always have my door open. She always knows she can come to me, that, we have disagreements and we have hard days, but my door is always open.
Mm-hmm.
And that has turned around. I don't know why, just a lot of things for me that I don't feel like I need to go and pressure them and make them have a, resolution to a disagreement. But they
Mm-hmm.
know that they can come in, even if it's at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keeping that connection.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
it.
I love that because you're right. It's like I notice now with my older son, I'm doing what my mom did to me. Let's talk. Tell me how you feel, and I turn it into a joke. Now I sit down. I'm like, do you want to talk about your feelings?
Uh-huh.
He laughs, and I'm remembering when I was a kid feeling so much pressure to like talk about things. And I've always heard that like therapist parents tend to do that. So I swore to myself I wasn't going to be one of those, you know, so many people that have parents that are therapists are like, they used to make us talk. And like, that was their trauma. So,
So much sharing.
so much processing all the time.
like forced talking. So I'm trying to like appreciate that, like if he just wants to sit and read a book next to me. Like last night my older son was so mad at me. He was 100% clear that my mission in life was to make him miserable, and yet he refused to go to bed in his room and he wanted to sleep on the couch, which is where I was sitting, and I kept joking with him. I'm like, you're so mad at me, yet you just want to be close to me right now, don't you? And he was like, no, I just want to be on the couch. And I just rubbed his head and we didn't talk about it. And he still was clear that my job was to make him miserable, yet he smiled as I rubbed his head. And I have to take those moments as being meaningful versus wanting the sort of resolve that I would like to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tricky process for me too. And every time you talk about that boy, I think about my Ben, who is the oldest of the three littles, and he just challenges me, and he challenges me, and he pushes me, and he was asking for permission to go somewhere, and Will was busy like over Christmas break, and I said, "Hey, come in here and talk to me," and he wouldn't even turn his head. I mean, I was like in the next room. He wouldn't even turn his head. He was just like, I'm going to sit here and stare at daddy, until he can do this with me. And he does it all the time. Yeah. He's just tricky. But then he'll come around and want to sit nearly on top of me, and he's 2 inches taller than me. But I just think it's an interesting thing. My mom always says to me, he needs you the most, and that's why he's pushing you away. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But it's the truth. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I grab, I think what I've trying to let go of for myself is like me needing to know how much they need me or love me or what that I'm a good mom. Like they can't meet that need for me, right? Like I have
Right.
that's not for them to meet, and they just need to like live their lives and I need to trust that I'm a good parent and a good person and not need that validation from them. But it's so hard when they're like blatantly not giving any of it. And I feel that part of me that's like, you need to know what a good mom, how much I do for you.
Yeah, I'd do anything for you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And that's pressure on them to have to like fulfill that for me.
Yeah.
Um, and just knowing again, that tends to be my dynamic with my mom. Like to this day, she's really still needs validation that she did a good job with us. And I'm like, Mom, like what more do you need? Like we're grown women, like we're all thriving, yet there's still a part of her that wants us to let her know she did a good job. And it feels like pressure. And I don't want to do that to my kids.
Mm.
I love what you said about that. I think, I'm thinking about our listeners, and one of the missions, I guess, of our movement is really reminding all of us that we're on a journey to learn how to trust ourselves again. And I see that motherhood is such that lesson. It's constantly whatever it is. I think we tend to turn to ourselves. If they're in a bad mood, oh no, was it something he ate? Was it something I did? Was it something I said? We are constantly on that overcompensation, really. I love what you said about just gaining their validation. Like, am I doing enough?
Yeah.
And so I think what you're sharing today is so powerful. That snowplow visualization is great, because I think about too, like our community who tends to overbook their children. We feel this pressure that you should sign up for your kids for every activity, and you're always on the go, and the weekends come and you should keep going and going. And so I'm curious for you, like what family life looks like, because we've had other guests talk about how they feel a little like out of step with culture, where they feel like they want to embrace a slower way of living. And, it's okay for our kids to get bored. And for me, I do feel that pressure. And so I like that snowplow effect. It's like, being bored and letting them figure out what to do and not have these activities to like prepare them so much for their future is
Mhm.
really, again, about trusting that what they need will find them too, that it's not all on us to take care of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't tend to overbook. I mean, my kids are kind of like homebodies. They like actually never want to leave the house. We've done a good job of that. So I've been really conscious of that, of like not making our life, and I still feel like our life is really rushed, and I'm always like, go, 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 go. But they tend to, do some after school activities. My older son does plays a sport. He plays like, he's playing basketball right now. But they'll never want to do more than one or two activities because then we're just too busy. And my kids do really love to be home. Um, and we have this like inside outside living, and our backyard is like a huge junkyard. Like they can build, they can paint stuff. I have a friend who lives in the back studio who's an artist. And so, what I like right now is I feel like our house is where kids come to get really creative. We bought a tool shed and they transformed it into their playroom, and they're painting the whole thing. So it's a disaster back here, but I always say this is what I do so that my kids aren't always on screens. Like we just let the house be a creative space.
Mhm.
And a lot of the activities we do is just getting together with friends. And sometimes I feel like, oh my God, I'm not that parent taking my kids to the museum or to these events. And I do see other families do that. And I feel this like a little bit of like, oh my God, am I supposed to be doing that? Um, but I think that, what I want my kids to feel is that, life is about community. Um, and like yesterday was such a great day because our neighbor's kid came over, and then um, Sebastian got a friend invited to a friend's house, and the whole day was just like kids being here or them going to other people's houses and not doing pre-planned things. I mean, that said, if there isn't enough to do, they get really restless, and there's nothing worse than two restless boys in the house, and then they want to go to screen watching, and
Mhm.
I think the screens are like for sure for me the hardest part of parenting. It feels like they have access to crack cocaine, and I'm the one who decides how much they get, and
Me
then
too.
they don't get enough.
I
And
literally feel almost the exact same thing. I usually say heroin, though,
yeah,
instead of crack cocaine.
Uh-huh.
But I
yeah,
feel like it's the only time that my kids get not nice to each other, really.
Yes.
Like they can be playing basketball,
Yes.
nobody's mean.
Yep.
They can be playing football across the street, nobody's mean. You get in the
Mhm.
basement and I hear the nastiest stuff,
Yeah.
and they're down there playing video games, and so it's tricky for me.
Well, and they always want one more. It's that whole like feeding that addiction thing.
know.
Just one more, just one more.
I've just got to finish this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hands down the hardest thing.
That's
I
another
just got
show, isn't it? We're gonna have to
Yeah.
have a show
a
just
whole
on
other show.
screens.
You know, the book that I like for that is there's a book called Parenting in the Age of Attention Snatchers.
Ooh.
And she really talks about how to talk to our kids about, I'm forgetting the term she uses. There's like when you're doing something that requires your like active attention, like reading a book or writing or doing art, and then passive attention, which is video games and videos and movies, and that you start to have your kids think about how much time did you spend today doing passive attention or active attention. And so it's about equipping them to think about it for as they get older.
That's good. We will share these book titles in our show notes so that everyone can get the link for that. But that makes me think about, Hala, your love of creativity. When you started talking about that, like that speaks my language so much. And what I have noticed, my oldest being nearly 9, and it's the Pokemon craze right now. It's like, oh my gosh, I mean, it's just invaded our lives. Like he wears Pokemon, everything is Pokemon.
Yeah.
And my 6-year-old, we eat and breathe creativity at our house, but my 6-year-old still, young enough that he just like everything he creates, it's all made up. It's his creative, whatever he thinks of, his imagination. But my oldest, it's like anytime he draws now, it's Pokemon. Anything he, and he's even having a hard time like thinking of characters. And so we really try to work on that. But I can see how the screen time and just too much of that, really sucks your creativity away.
Yeah. And it makes them restless. And I feel like the days when they have screens after they get off, they're like depressed for a while after that. They don't have the instinct to go and cut up a cardboard box and tape it together or whatever it is they would naturally do when they weren't on screens, for sure. For sure. And then sometimes though I worry that because I'm stricter than most of the parents, and then I worry, am I being too strict and making it more attractive? So it's always such a dance, I mean, they get, they get screen time on the weekends and it's like they get an hour of it, so they have their timers and they can, they break
Yes.
3 sections of 20 minutes to make it go longer, but what I try to think about is rather than focusing on doing less screens, I'm focusing on continuing to offer them things that inspire them, whether it's just like dumping the Legos in the middle of the living room or getting a new batch of paints for the backyard, continuing to have other options there.
We do show day, and that has helped a lot too, where they just know like Tuesday after school, that's show day. They call it show day, so they get to watch their show or do their screen time, but then we don't have to go through, okay, it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
They've already had their show day. I don't
Yeah.
have to keep fighting that. So that's been helpful.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about creativity a little bit, I noticed on your website, you say creative movement and honest self-exploration have always been a source of tremendous healing for you. And I would love to know, I'd like to hear more about that and what led you to movement and dance in your own life and how that's helped you.
Yeah. Well, for me, movement has always been my source of creativity. I've never been drawn to like drawing or painting or sculpture. I mean, I love doing it, but it's not where I light up as much as with dancing and moving. And I started, I mean, when I was 16 years old, I became an aerobics instructor, and they were basically like dance classes, and I loved it. I loved the music and the dancing, and I've always taken dance classes and done a little performing, but I've always used dance more just for my own medicine, not as like a performance. Um, and for me, movement, whether it's yoga or dance, um, allows me to like really be with myself, and also tap into a joyful part of myself. Music really does that for me. And so it's always been a really big part of how I teach. Being a yoga teacher has been, such a big part of my life, but you know, you'll often find yourself dancing in my yoga classes because the two come together. Um, and I feel like so much of the disconnect that we experience in our lives is about being disconnected from our own bodies, disconnected from our sensations and from our breath. So to me, that's really one of the most powerful forms of medicine is moving our bodies and being in relationship to our bodies. Because our body is like our GPS system and it's supposed to guide us. But when we're disconnected from it or it's really out of balance, it's not going to guide us in the right way. So, for me, that's my highest priority is trying to do my best to take care of my body. And that doesn't mean even about being fit. It's just about even if it's just going out for a walk or doing some breath work, um, that connection is central.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember my first workshop with you, which was when your oldest was just a baby, so probably 8 years ago at least.
Mhm.
Um, and we did dancing
Mhm.
at the end, and I have always been comfortable with yoga, and I'm comfortable in a class where people are telling us what to do. But
Mhm.
I literally, like, while you were talking, started feeling like, oh my gosh, I remember that we just were dancing, like, free flowing, and and that was a big, like, we were finding our life's purpose that weekend, and it really was a big, important weekend for me. um, but the next time I was with you, later that year at Esalen in Big Sur, we were dancing and we danced for a really long time. Like, I had blood blisters on the bottom of my feet the next morning.
Wow.
And that it was one of the most healing moments of my life. And I've shared it several times that um, I didn't dance at my own wedding
Ah.
because I felt really judged as a young person. My parents just kind of like made fun of me one time. My sister was a really good dancer and I wasn't. And they just kind of laughed at me. And
Mhm.
I then kind of always felt like everybody's watching me. And
Mhm.
that night, I just, for the first time, really just felt like, oh, this feels good.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Like nobody's looking at me. And,
Yeah.
I was like flying through the air. What I mean? I'm like, oh my
Oh,
God, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free.
I
Mm-hmm.
Um,
love that.
but I love it too. I love it too. I think for a lot of people, I mean, it was,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I
just,
think that like and and with dancing or even with like singing, I teach with Suzanne Sterling who gets us singing and she always asks people, how many of you were told that you shouldn't sing when you were a kid? And usually it's like three-quarters of the room raises their
me.
hand, right? So
Mm-hmm.
whether it's with dancing or singing or art or the way we express ourselves, I think that when we're told we shouldn't do it, it can stay with us for so long and then we shut that part of ourselves down.
Yeah, yeah. If you feel like you're not good at this, then it
Yeah,
ruins it.
Yes.
totally.
Yes.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about embracing imperfection. And
Mhm.
for me, that's, as a recovering perfectionist, that speaks my
Yep.
language. And I've never had trouble dancing necessarily. I've never done dance like I loved Zumba and things like that, but I never grew up dancing. But one thing I do notice is if I'm getting too like cerebral or I'm like getting really stuck in my head or feeling those headaches or just the rigid side of me, and you're so right that movement just helps you step back into your heart. So one thing that we do in my house is we do dance parties.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
good, but yeah, it's so freeing when you're not thinking about anyone else. You're just with your kids, your 6-year-old, your whoever you are with. They're not going to judge you. They're going to see, mom's, unless maybe they're the teenage years.
Well, no, no, no. Mine judge me. Mine are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm having fun and I'm rocking out."
Yes. Yes.
Do it or don't. Do it or don't.
Yeah. Well, that's
Exactly.
good. You're showing them to be themselves though.
Yeah, and
So,
I'm showing them that I don't need them to like what I'm doing in order for me to be enjoying it fully. You know, that's
mhm.
what I want for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Me
yeah,
too. Yeah. That is, it's one of the governing kind of principles of my parenting is that nobody feels like they shouldn't be doing something um, because I think somebody else is better at it.
Mhm.
That you're not good just because you can follow the beat better
Right.
than somebody else. Yeah.
yeah.
So I first met Hala through a yoga workshop she was doing. I think everybody would be interested to know how you found yoga. And I love the story of like when you taught your first class.
My first yoga class. Oh, no, I think you've heard this story about when I taught my first fitness class.
Yeah. Yeah, the jumping in.
Jumping in, yeah. Um, well, when I first tried yoga, I hated it. I knew it was good for me, but I was in college. I was a sugar addict. I needed to be on that treadmill for an hour to just feel sane. And yoga was so slow, and I had to feel my body, and it was awful. But I knew it was good for me, and I recognized something in the teacher. I was like, whatever that chick's got, I want it. She was just grounded and comfortable in her own skin. The first yoga class I took was not like a power yoga fancy class. It was a simple class taught by a really grounded teacher. So I knew, I was like, note to self, one day you got to go back to this yoga thing. But then I had to jump back on that treadmill again because I couldn't tolerate yoga. Um, but years later, actually through being diagnosed with cervical dysplasia, which was like cancer on my cervix. It wasn't spreading, but it was still cancer on my cervix. I had this health scare that had me realize that there was a difference between being fit and being healthy. And I was really fit. I worked out a ton, but I wasn't healthy. I ate crappy food. I ate a lot of sugar. I really struggled with food, but I worked out a lot. But it didn't mean that I was healthy. So I started to think about my body really differently through that health scare and started to think about eating organic food and the quality of the food that I was eating and think about my relationships and my emotions. And that's when I really got into yoga as a way to connect with my body. And I realized that exercising and working out was not me connecting to my body, it was me trying to control and shape my body, quite the opposite. So that was really when yoga became foundational for me because it forced me to have to be with myself. And in doing that, I was able to heal and get better. Now, I don't know that I healed my cervical dysplasia. I did a lot of herbs. And when I went in to have the cells removed, they didn't find anything. So I'd like to believe I healed myself, but I don't know. Um, but that's really what brought me into yoga. And I started teaching. I had already been teaching fitness for a really long time, and when I found yoga, it felt like I was coming home. And got trained as soon as I could, but took a while before I really officially started teaching yoga because I took it seriously. Um, and there's been no turning back. Although my practice has changed tremendously, and is really different than how it looked in my 20s. It's much simpler now. It really changed my relationship with my body.
Yeah.
In your
Yeah.
first class, what was that?
Well, that was my first. I mean, that was actually my first fitness class. When I train yoga teachers, I talk to them about how, the first time you teach, when you first start teaching, you're going to be really nervous. So it's just a funny story about like I had this whole routine and I got up to teach and I just blanked out and I just had people do jumping jacks for the whole class, basically. Because I forgot what I was going to do.
That's funny. When all else fails, do jumping
Yeah, you
jacks.
can just keep jumping jacking.
It wasn't a yoga class, it was an aerobics class.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, in yoga, we talk a lot about, helping us find our center or to get grounded. And I'd like to know, in your own words, what does that mean for those of us who are so busy and we put our self care needs generally last on the list and we're trying to keep things going and we lose touch with that? What does that mean to you to find your center? And how do we know what that feels like? And how can that help us in motherhood?
It's a great question. I'll start by asking us to think about what it means to be uncentered, right? So I know when I'm uncentered, I'm thinking about other people's well being or other people's thoughts of me or other people's state more than my own. And, as a mother, that's natural in some ways, right? Like we're always attuning to our children, um, often at the expense of attuning to ourselves. So for me to be centered means knowing where I am in time and space and how I'm doing, not to the exclusion of my empathy for other people or attuning to my children or my friends and family or students, but staying in my own sense of self as I am witnessing them and what they need. I know that I'm uncentered when I'm moving really fast, when I'm micromanaging everybody because I'm needing them to behave a certain way so that I feel okay. And that's a really big one. Um, and when I'm in my own center, I move a little slower and I'm able to conduct myself in a way such that I'm not, again, needing the external world to conform to what I need so that I'm okay. And as a parent, I think about that a lot. I think about how I think that the majority of the time that I get upset at my kids, when I really sit with what's bothering me, it's not what they did, like they left their clothes on the floor or they were rude. It's that their behavior is making me feel like I'm not a good parent, and I'm mad at them for making me feel like a bad parent. And that's, again, my center is in them. I'm needing them to validate my experience. When I'm in my center, they can be in their experience, and it doesn't mean that I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong and I'm not setting boundaries with them. It's just coming with a different energy. Being centered is also about feeling like we have our own personal power within us. And sometimes for me, being centered is a physical state. Like it's about me feeling my center, like even my belly or my heart, feeling physically in my body. And to me, it's also really connected with being grounded. You talked about that in the beginning. Being grounded is as simple as feeling our feet on the floor or our butt in the chair, feeling like something solid is supporting us. And again, when I'm not grounded, I feel anxious. I'm not trusting things. I don't trust in the flow of my life, and I feel really disempowered. And so being grounded and being centered are things we can invoke physically, like even right now, feeling your butt in the chair or your feet on the floor, looking for something that's solid in your own body. Often when we look for that, if we find it, we feel ourselves settle a little bit. We feel ourselves get a little more present. My goal in my parenting is to try to be as grounded and centered as I can all the time. And then from there, trust that whatever I say or whatever I do is going to be the best thing that I've got. It might not always be right. It might not always be the correct thing, but it'll be the best that I've got in that moment.
I love that. The best that you've got in that moment. That's good.
That's good.
I'm all about just lowering the standards. My
Yes.
standards are very low.
Keep it
Well,
simple.
do you have something? Obviously, you shared, your love of yoga and the creative movement and dance, but is there something is there some sort of self-care ritual, simple or not, that you try not to miss that helps you stay centered each day? Maybe like a morning ritual or just something that, even just a mantra you use or something that just helps you kind of stay centered.
Yeah. I mean, it's different. I mean, my morning ritual is my coffee, which is like the best moment of my whole day.
I can't wait for it.
So we really are having coffee together.
I can't wait.
And it's the ritual of it. Like even this morning, usually my husband takes the kids to school and I go in to get my coffee, but today I took them to school and I made them leave early because I didn't want to rush. I was going to find the coffee, go to the coffee shop and sit and order it and drink it. And I made them get to school earlier so I could do that because it was my 10 minutes,
Yes. And you have to drink it hot.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Of course. And I need like specific espresso beans for that coffee. But right now that my kids are older, I actually, five, 3-4 days a week, I have my ritual. I actually started running and I run for like 20 minutes and like, that's my exercise and my self-care. Or I actually started going to a Pilates class. Like I'm starting to take classes again and do things for myself that are physically connecting. But I like to do forms of movement that are mindful. So of course yoga is within that, but I've been having to diversify because my body needs something other than yoga. So I make sure whatever I'm doing feels really connecting for me. And allows me to be present. So, it's gotten pretty good in the last couple of years where even if I'm going to just go for a walk, but my emergency self-care method, if I don't have time, is a hot bath. Because I can do that in 15 minutes. And I've been known to take conference calls in hot baths because it's such a busy day. I haven't been able to move my body and I just mute the call while I'm getting in. No one knows.
Nobody knows.
I could be in the bath right now and you wouldn't know.
You know, I can see why Ashley loves you. You are kindred. Sometimes we text each other right before we get in the hot bath. We're like, oh, I'm escaping for the day now.
Or we're talking.
It's the best.
And it has to be really, really hot.
Yeah.
Really
Oh,
hot.
yes.
Nothing worse than when it's not hot. I know.
True story. I am interested in, if you don't know, Hala is in LA and for sure in a mindful community, just in everything that you do. How do you feel about the outcome of the political season? And what can mothers and women do to find their own personal power so they can have a voice for peace and love?
Mm. I feel, I think, devastated and sad and overwhelmed. And the image that I've been using is that I feel like hope and despair are rising up together. Um, because it's a really hard time right now, and what's happening is not good, and there's no way around it. There's no way to like make it good.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity for us to strengthen all that we're already doing. I feel like my whole life has prepared me for this moment. Um, and as yogis, we have the skill to be with discomfort and figure out what we're going to do with that. Um, and I see so many people around me already who've been doing amazing work before Trump came, because these problems have all existed. They're just now being fed even more because of the administration that he's bringing in and who he is. But I also see so many people doing amazing work to resist it. I also feel like this is an opportunity for my kids to get politicized in a way that they might not have before. And, you know, politics can be so confusing and overwhelming. And what Donald Trump is doing is making it really easy for us to see the problems that are there. It's not even being dressed up anymore. It's just blatant. And in a weird way, that's the gift, because, we live in a racist country that's built on white supremacy and genocide. That's always been true. But the mainstream media has been able to allow certain people, mostly white people, to be in denial of that and pretend that everything is okay. And so, the gift is that, now the problem isn't dressed up in denial. It's really, really obvious. And it's actually a little easier for me to talk to my kids because, um, my little one, not so much, but my older son, I'm able to talk to him about why we don't like Donald Trump and why is building walls bad. Like, Donald Trump is actually, because he acts like a 5-year-old, is making it easier to talk to 5-year-olds about it, because it's really it's simple, and it's simple to talk about why being mean isn't correct. So in a weird way, I feel like I'm having an opportunity to politicize my children in a way that meets them developmentally.
Yeah.
Because the public discourse is so childish. Um, and I'm trying to model empathy too, and trying to explain that, like, the people that are in support of Trump just don't understand, like, that they're not all bad people. They're just confused. And so there's been some cool opportunities. On a good day, I'm that way. On a bad day, they're making up really bad Trump rap songs, which they love to do. But, I feel like there's a lot to do. I mean, now there's so much to do. I mean, I took Sebastian, my older son, to a rally, and we made signs. And I'm going to go to the Women's March. And, I think it's about, now so many people are at risk, and it's really about each person doing their one small piece. If we think we have to do the one thing that changes everything, we're just going to stay home and eat chocolate all day long, because that's overwhelming. So, what's your one piece? Are you going to go help escort people into Planned Parenthood? Are you going to find out who's undocumented in your area and help them, raise money for lawyers or paperwork? Unfortunately, right now, there's a lot we can be doing just in our local communities. And I think some people are called to more political action, and they might be flying to DC to do stuff. But especially as parents, my job, this next generation is going to have their work cut out for them. So my job is to do my best raising my kids to be awake. But the thing I've been really trying to focus on is telling them stories that are hopeful, because it's easy to be all doomsday, and then they're just going to want to play video games all day because things are going to feel like they're overwhelmingly bad. So I've been trying to talk to them more about exciting things that are happening, showing them art from artists that are trying to push back against the current agenda, and having them think about what they love and how what they love can contribute to solutions in the world. And so if you're an artist, even if you love to make food, whatever you do can contribute to being part of the solution. So that's what we talk about a lot with the kids.
It is, I've had, I feel like, just similar experiences, but just with older kids that
Mm-hmm.
My Jake just graduated from college, and he was so upset. He was so upset. And I almost appreciated how upset he was.
Yeah.
And I mean, we for sure are talking more about politics and what his beliefs are. I think he just kind of took for granted
Yeah.
what our beliefs were, because he's had Barack Obama,
Mm-hmm.
being his leader for so long, and that he is doing like pretty deep self exploration this year that he wouldn't have been doing. That he
Yeah.
would have, kind of
Yeah.
kept on marching, business
Mm-hmm.
as usual, and
Mm-hmm.
just let Hillary do her thing. So it's been interesting for me with all of my kids, just their
Yeah.
beliefs, and they'll come home and talk about, a conversation came up with a friend, and I think their family loves Donald Trump. And I said they might love Donald Trump. Ask them why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And I agree. I think this is waking up the millennials, right? Who could have just coasted. And in a weird way, that's the gift of all of this.
I think so too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Hala, we could talk all afternoon with you, and I can't wait for that day when we're actually in a coffee shop. I hear
Yes.
that you're coming to Kansas City. Can you tell us a little bit about your workshop and what you are going to be doing here?
Yes. Yes. I'll be there in the fall. I wish I had the dates in front of me, but I can look it up.
It's mid-September, like maybe 17th, 18th, 19th, something like that.
Okay.
And we'll have
I'm
that in the show notes too.
Great, great. I'm going to be there doing an Off the Mat Into the World workshop with Sean Korn and Suzanne Sterling, my co-founders of Off the Mat Into the World. It's our 5-day intensive. It's called Yoga, Purpose, and Action. And it's a really deep dive into who we are, how our own wounds and traumas and life experiences shape us, and what we feel called to do, what our calling is in the world, and what the world is calling on us to do. So the first few days are kind of personal, really going into the physiology of trauma, the chakras, and our own psychology, and then really looking at collective trauma, social justice, purpose within a justice framework. And at the end, people are invited to really be visioning what it is they want to create, or how they want to continue to do the work that they're doing, maybe with some changes. It's a really inspiring week, and it's work I'm really proud of to be doing there.
Well,
And I'm
can't
excited to be
wait.
back
I
in
can't
Kansas
wait. I
City.
can't wait.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah.
Sounds wonderful. And as we wrap up, we usually ask our guests to just leave our moms with maybe a call to action. I think you kind of already shared one, but what would you say, like, for our mindful mama moment, if someone could leave after listening to the show? What would you like them to do in their own life?
I guess in regards to being a mom, to being a parent, I would say that so much of our work is to stay out of the way of our children's growth, and to always be aware of when are we getting in the way because of our own stuff, when do we need to get out of the way, and to also practice as much self-compassion as you can, and trust and know that the love we have for our kids will override ways that we might make mistakes or not do it right. That really what matters is what's in our heart.
Beautiful.
That's a really good one. Hala, thank you for being with us on the Mindful Mama movement.
Pleasure.
We're really grateful and loved it.
Thank you. I loved getting to talk to the two of you. And yes, you'll have to tell me where the good coffee is so we can go there in person when I come.
We will.
All right. Take care. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for listening. We love getting to do this each and every week. Every Tuesday morning, we'll have a new show for you. If you stop by iTunes and subscribe to our show, you will automatically get our new shows. If you are a new listener, go back and listen to our other shows. We've had so many wonderful interviews, so many more wonderful interviews to come. Thank you. Thank you for being part of our community, and we will see you next time.
Open